Welcome to Wendigo Tales. I hope you enjoy. A first-hand account of Operation Winter Silence. Declassified Testimony 2045. Survivor Report Dr. Elias Shaw Part 1. The Descent. March 3rd, 2025. Southeast Greenland ice sheet. GPS coordinates classified. If you are reading this and someone finally decided the truth mattered more than the cover-up, my name is Dr. Elias Shaw. was a glaciologist with the University of Edinburgh, contracted by a NATO-backed research team in early 2025 for an operation dubbed Winter Silence. The public-facing mission: geothermal anomaly mapping near the southeastern edge of the Greenland ice sheet. The real objective? Excavating a Nazi facility that, according to decades-old intelligence, never officially existed. We were told the mission would last no more than 3 weeks. We arrived there by helicopter, dropped in a crescent-shaped clearing between jagged ice shelves that looked like the jaws of some ancient beast. A temporary shelter had already been erected by a NATO precursor team, a skeleton crew of engineers who left the moment our boots touched the ground. To be honest, the first warning sign should have been us all being armed and having to undergo mandatory combat training. The second was the crew. They moved fast, quiet, faces blank. No welcome, no briefing. Just a warning from a tech who looked haunted. "Don't read the papers," he said. We assumed he had just been here too long. The entrance to the bunker was discovered nearly 150 feet deep under the glacial ice, preserved almost perfectly by nature's indifference. Using thermal imaging had revealed an artificial geometry, angular patterns no natural formation could make. With industrial drills and seismic vacuums, the precursor team had cracked through the last dozen meters of blue-white crust and found the door. Made of cold, hard steel, reinforced, stamped with the insignia of the Wehrmacht and a code: Schneewolf Hall, Dreisen, Snowwolf's Lair, 13. Does that mean there's more? Kessler, our team leader, led the group from the front, and Petrov, our engineer, covered the rear. Inside, the air reeked of chemical decay and rust. The lights were dead, but many of the wall panels were still intact. The corridor was narrow, industrial, and unwelcoming, constructed less like a military base and more like a crypt. The metal groaned under our weight, but the temperature was shockingly stable. Somehow, the internal environment was insulated, preserved. Our team was made up of 10 people, each chosen for their expertise. There's Captain Adrian Kessler. He was former Swiss military and our team leader. Our microbiologist. She was chatty on the flight in, but didn't speak a word once we landed. Tom Ramirez, our demolition and retrieval expert. Ingrid Lenz, a German linguist and historian. Hendricks, our weapons expert. He was always quiet and secretive, always writing in a black notebook. Dr. Mahir Al-Said, our biochemist. I have no clue which institute he worked for. Then Yuri Petrov, our Russian engineer. He seemed to have too much knowledge about Nazi tech. Karen Wu, our electrical systems and security engineer. Lucas Page, our camera operator. He was the one who documented everything. And then finally me, Dr. Elias Shaw, glaciologist and the data recorder. As we continued down the corridor, it eventually opened up into a wide communal area with small metal tables and chairs dotted around the room, with Nazi memorabilia, portraits and propaganda decorating the walls. There was 4 doors, 2 to the left and 2 to the right. On the right, the furthest door had an ancient cigarette dispenser next to it, and the door was still open. Kessler took point and went into the room, whilst Ramirez, Petrov and Hendricks cleared the other 3 rooms. After the rooms were cleared, we all gathered in the room Kessler went in. We set up base inside what appeared to be a command atrium, a 4-story tall room with walls decorated with old German signage, worn maps, with ancient computers and radios frozen in time. What stood out to us was the computers. They seemed more recent, as if something from the 70s. There was something chilling about how normal everything looked, despite the Nazi stuff. Like they'd simply vanished mid-shift. But there was something else. Beyond the command room was a sealed door marked STUFE 1 to 5. It turned out to be an elevator. Only levels 1 and 2 were immediately accessible. The rest had been blocked remotely from somewhere, according to Wu. However, she managed to bypass the first few systems and override the elevators. With each level we descended, we found things more bizarre than the last. Level 1 was military. There was the barracks, several mess halls, and the armoury. Old weapons, uniforms, and personal effects were strewn about. Beds and cupboards were destroyed and covered in dried blood, mixed with a dull blue residue. On a desk I found an open journal. Amongst the smudged and blood-stained pages, I could decipher a crazed soldier's ramblings. One phrase repeated in multiple entries. The blue god sleeps. Level 2 was research, filled with microscopes, chalkboards, a surgery room and 6 refrigeration units. And once again, they were all damaged, torn apart and covered in blood. I still don't understand why we didn't turn back. We all continued through in silence, and most of us were clearly on edge. One room was filled with cages, the kind used for animals, except much larger, and the bars were far thicker. Some of the bars were bent outward, coated with a dull blue liquid. Ray's paused and quietly collected some samples, and then we moved on. Then came level 3. That's where we found the hangars. Paige broke the silence first. "Wow, are those UFOs?" he said whilst recording them. Petrov responded, "Da. They look similar to the Diglock." "I thought it was just all conspiracy and propaganda," stated Lenz, as she looked up in awe. "Thank God they didn't use it then, otherwise we'd all be speaking German," laughed Ramirez. "No offence, Lenz. None taken." The aircraft bays held unmarked, clearly incomplete flying machines. Most were sleek, round, disc-like designs, whilst others were bell-shaped. They exhibited no propellers and no clear thrusters. Petrov theorised they used anti-gravity propulsion, whereas Al-Said proposed some form of magnetic field manipulation, but none of us were propulsion engineers. There was also 6 fully built Go-Through-Go 229s, I found a blueprint with a name and drawings later on. They were very similar to the Ho 229 prototype the Germans made during the war. I learnt about it from finding explained on YouTube. In one corner, we found rows of fully assembled V2 rockets and partially assembled larger rockets, which were maybe V3s. Near them was a crate of what appeared to be rifles, not like anything from World War II. They were made of some type of lightweight alloy, with chambers that housed pulsing crystalline cores. One was labelled Leitwerfer, which means light thrower in English. They looked similar to the Wunderwaffe from Call of Duty. Captain Kessler kept one. "It's humming," he said curiously. We went back to the elevator. Then once we gathered all inside, Lenz pressed a button for the next floor. Level 4 is what changed everything. I knew we should have turned back sooner. I don't understand why we didn't. I thought we were just studying an abandoned base. I think the others knew something I didn't. As the elevator descended, dread started to creep in. The tension in the air was palpable, whilst we all waited in silence. The small relief we had from the gore had come and gone. Then the elevator lurched to a stop at sub-level 4. The door slid open to reveal a hallway unlike the others. This wasn't military grey or sterile white like the floors above. This was different. The walls were lined with a black glassy material, obsidian-like and faintly warm to the touch. A dim ambient blue glow pulsed from under the floor panels, like a heartbeat. There was a low hum, almost inaudible, but it set my teeth on edge. Kessler led us from the front. We fanned out, weapons ready, and Page with his camera. We advanced slowly, stepping into a vast circular chamber. At first, we thought it was a water treatment facility, or an advanced reactor room. The space was immense, easily over 300 feet across, and dominated by around 4 dozen vertical glass vats, arranged in concentric rings. Each stood over 10 foot tall, filled with a viscous, bioluminescent blue liquid that emitted a soft hypnotic glow. Some still bubbled faintly, tubes running into metal housings above them. Inside each vat was something. They looked like humans. We all stepped closer. Some appeared still, floating in fetal positions, with tubes inserted into their spines and skulls. Others were grotesquely malformed, bloated, stretched, their eyes sealed shut, mouths open in eternal screams. Some had skin blackened with frostbite or rot. One vat had clawed handprints on the inside of the glass, frozen mid-scratch. Ramirez muttered, "Jesus Christ," and turned away to throw up. Reyes whispered, "These were people. This wasn't cryogenics. It was containment." At the far end of the chamber, Kessler found something even worse. The pods. There were 6 massive coffin-like structures made of a dull black metal. Each one bore a brass plate labelled Subject 001 through to 6, and above them the words Project Eisengutter, Neues Erdisches Zeitalter, Project Iron God, for the new Aryan age. All of the pods had been opened, not unlocked, not dismantled, but forced open from within. What was left was mangled metal and crumpled doors. One pod slid had been hurled across a chamber and embedded in a wall. Inside was a skeletal framework of restraints which were torn apart. Dried blood was still poured in the bottom, mixed with that same blue goo. Al-Said was at one of the consoles, scanning through frozen UI text in German. It translated to Subject 004, Aggressive Tissue Regeneration, Neural Degeneration, Secondary Mutation after 72 hours, Containment recommended, not viable for deployment. There were logs, experiments, diagrams, but no mention of escape protocols. No termination failsafes. Just a growing desperation to evolve something beyond human. Petrov pointed out several words scrawled on the floor near the central control station, etched deep into the steel plating with a thick blade or a claw. Schläft nicht, aber ändert sich. He does not sleep. He changes. That was when we heard it. A metallic groan. Not from us. Deep. Distant. Kessler ordered. Backtrack, now. But it was too late. As we turned to leave, the blue glow from one of the vats flickered violently and briefly illuminated the room, then surged like lightning underwater. The glass cracked on the opposite side from us. We all froze. A low guttural thrum pulsed through the floor, almost in excitement. We all stood in silence as we heard the crack continue to spider web up the glass. Then suddenly, it gave way. The sound of goo as something large and heavy fell to the floor. Then it let out an inhuman guttural scream, one that I wish I could forget. Part 2. Contact. Then it let out an inhuman guttural scream, one that I wish I could forget. Then something else moved inside the chamber. Not just one, there was multiple. Dark, fast, and animal-like. Lucas was the first to go. The camera rig spun wildly as he was pulled into the shadows, screaming until it was cut off by a sickening wet crunch. His camera landed on its side, red light still recording in the dark. Kessler raised his lead further and fired. A beam of burning blue plasma tore through the dark, revealing the creature mid-lunge. What I saw in that moment is seared into my memory. A humanoid frame, but elongated, twisted, skin translucent, pulsing with that same blue glow from the vats. Its jaw unhinged like a serpent. Its jaw unhinged like a serpent. No eyes, just black holes in a melted face, covered with tumours. The beam of plasma grazed its side, singeing its skin, but continued through the air, showing no pain. We all watched in horror as it latched onto Kessler and ripped into his neck. We all turned and ran. Hendricks covered the rear. I don't know what happened to him for sure, but I can only guess. As one second he was firing his gun, then the next the hall behind us went dark, and then we heard the screaming. His voice. Then a wet tearing. We made it to the elevator, but it was dead. Wu tried to reroute the emergency override. Nothing worked. "We're locked down," she cried. "It must have been NATO. They sealed us in." But Trav pointed out a maintenance shaft we had all missed. We opened the door, which revealed a maintenance ladder, ancient and narrow. We climbed. That's all we could do. Ramirez slipped halfway up, his leg slipping on a twisted rung. Something rushed up the shaft. I saw claws, too many, and then heard his scream as he was dragged back down, then followed by a loud wet crunch that echoed around us. We quickened our pace. We eventually reached level 3 and barred the shaft door. Ray's was sobbing, clutching her hand where she appeared to have cut herself. "What were they doing down there?" she whispered through her tears. Al-Said answered grimly. "They were trying to create gods, a superior race. Now, we need to keep moving. I'll keep watch, you guys find us a way out." The rest was a blur. I remember we searched level 3 until we found another maintenance door, which led up to level 2. We continued through and up another maintenance shaft until eventually we got to level 0. By the time we got there, we found that the entrance to the bunker was sealed from the outside. Petrov then led us back to the command room, hoping to signal the outside. We searched the room for anything we could use to help fix the radios. Petrov began messing with a large radio off in the corner, while Wu helped Ray's bandage a hand. That's when I found the journal, hidden in a drawer beneath the lead scientist's desk. The name on the cover was Dr. Yosef Mengele. His entries were monstrous, cold, insane. He was as inhuman as the monsters he had created, obsessed with creating a superior being that could withstand any environment, regenerate any injury, and operate as superhuman reflexes. He referred to the subjects as Prüfstein, test bodies. Most were pulled from concentration camps. Many were intentionally mutated using a compound referred to only as Blaues Erwachen, the Blue Awakening. They were injected, bathed, and even force-fed the serum. He recorded, only 3% survive phase 1, but those that do become something divine. He believed that they were the stepping stones in the evolution for the perfect human being. To fine-tune the serum for the genetically superior, the first step in living weapons for the Fourth Reich, to rise again from the ice when the time was right. I closed the journal. My hands were shaking. This man was more monstrous than the history books made us believe. Outside the room, a blue light flickered briefly, which illuminated the communal space. Then something moved. A faint clicking sound, like an insect, echoed throughout the room as we all froze in terror. They must have got Al-Said. We all turned off our lights in unison. There was only 4 of us left. Reyes, Wu, Petrov, and me. Petrov then creeped to the door and slowly inched it closed. Outside, the creatures moved through the corridor and the other rooms. You could hear them if you were quiet enough. Slick footsteps across metal, soft scratching against walls, the occasional deep inhalation like something testing the air for our scent. Every few minutes, we heard them screaming again. Not like animals, but like men, as if using a primal form of communication. Wu tried to quietly reboot the emergency uplink system. She whispered, "If we can just boost the signal, someone might still hear us." Petrov paced, gripping his sidearm and muttering in Russian. He looked at me and said, "They weren't just building weapons, they were building kings, hierarchies. Some of them were made to lead the others." I didn't ask how he knew. I already suspected he hadn't been sent here just as an engineer. He'd known too much from the start. Ray sat curled near the corner, whispering prayers into her sleeve. I noticed her fingers were stained with something slick and black. I asked her if she was hurt. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "But when I touched the fluid in the pod, it felt warm, and it moved, like it knew I was there." Whilst I was still desperately trying to find anything that could get the radios up, I found more logs, typed documents buried in a filing cabinet. Mengele had overseen early stage trials, but the later entries were signed by someone else, Dr. von Kluger, Chief Overseer, Eisengut Directive. It stated that the blue liquid was alive. It didn't just mutate them, it merged with them. Their cells were symbiotic hosts. That's why some were still glowing from the inside. They weren't just creatures, they were vessels to spread it further. Kruger wasn't trying to create soldiers. He was building a new species to replace mankind entirely. One passage burnt into my memory. Stage 4 specimens are no longer affected by cold, pain, or traditional neural inhibitors. They exhibit primitive loyalty to the source compound, cluster behaviour around high concentrations, and increasingly advanced problem-solving capacity. Language re-emerging. Self-awareness suspected. That last line terrified me. Language re-emerging, self-awareness suspected. Then came the breach. A sound like tearing metal echoed from the room next to us. Then a loud thump as something landed on the floor, which was then followed by a blast of air and a roar that shook the walls. The temperature plummeted. "They've found the secondary duct access," Wu said. We had minutes, maybe less. Petrov pulled a satchel of thermite charges from his bag. "I'll blow the hallway. It'll draw their attention and act as a distraction." "I'll go with you," I said. "Niet," he snapped. "You need to get those files out. The world needs to know what was under here." He handed me the journal and a data drive from his pocket. "You see anything glowing?" he added, grimacing. "You run the other way." Petrov opened the door ajar and squeezed through to set off alone into the corridor, laying the charges. A minute later, the gaps around the door lit up white hot, followed by a thunderous blast that shook the walls and dislodged ceiling panels. The smoke was still clearing when the door began to bulge inward. What we could hear was ringing from the explosion, but we knew it was something ramming the door. Without wasting any time, Wu led us to an old ventilation shaft behind a large filing cabinet, something she later said she found looking through some papers. We crawled inside just as the door exploded open behind us. I looked back and saw one of the creatures enter the room. It wasn't like the other one we saw. It was tall, pale blue veins glowing beneath its partially translucent white skin, eyes black and reflective, like obsidian mirrors. Its ribs expanded as it sniffed the air. It was trying to find us. Then it shrieked, a terrible modulated sound like metal being tortured. We crawled upwards. The shaft twisted upward, tight and corroded. Wu was in front, Ray's was behind me. Halfway up, something echoed below us. It was a wet chittering sound. "They're in the vents," Ray's whispered. We moved faster. Wu reached a junction point and pushed up into a maintenance chamber. As I was helping Ray through the hatch, I felt her jerk back violently. A long black clawed hand had wrapped around her ankle, yanking her downward. I grabbed her arms, pulling with everything I had. But the thing, it was stronger. Her eyes met mine. "Don't let go," she whispered. "Please." I nodded while straining, whilst Wu held the hatch open. She then suddenly slipped from my grip as she was yanked violently downwards. She bashed her head on the opposite side of the hatch as she was pulled back and vanished into the dark, screaming. Wu sealed the hatch quickly, and then we ran. We continued through winding dark tunnels and made it to the surface a few hours later. We exited the maintenance shaft and into a cave that connected to the surface. The air outside felt like fire after the stable temperatures down below. Once we exited, we collapsed into the snow, overwhelmed by exhaustion. We were two shadows crawling across the ice when we saw the faint orange glow of a fire. A small Inuit camp, locals travelling through the region. They saw us. They ran towards us with blankets, speaking fast in Greenlandic. Wu passed out in their arms. I stayed conscious just long enough to hear one of the elders say something in English. I'll never forget it. The blue lights have returned. The old gods beneath the glacier have awakened. It's been 3 days since we were found. Wu didn't make it. Her organs apparently failed within hours of being rescued. Apparently the autopsy was inconclusive. However, the official story was hypothermia. But I know the truth. I remember seeing those dark flecks floating in her eyes. I dread to think what was on sub-level 5. As I write this from a hospital bed, something is happening to me. My veins, they're glowing faintly blue in the dark. When I look in the mirror, I see those same dark flecks swirling in my eyes, like ash in the wind. I haven't slept in 2 nights. I don't feel tired or fatigued, but I can hear them, somewhere beneath the ice, calling. They're calling for me.